Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. Today I'll recap a sci-fi thriller film called The Titan. Spoilers incoming. The movie starts with the protagonist, Rick, and his family arriving at a research base. They're settled in a fancy house and one of the research assistants, Freya, tells them that they can call their friends and family whenever they like. His son, Lucas, calls his wife, Abigail, outside as they look at the stars. Lucas asks Rick which one he's going to, but Rick tells him that he would need a telescope to see it. The next morning, Abigail starts unpacking their things. She brings out her framed degree in pediatrics as well as a framed news article of when Rick was found in the Syrian desert after being missing. She goes up the stairs and finds Rick and Lucas fixing something. She then answers the door and lets a researcher named Collingwood inside. Collingwood talks to Rick about the research he was chosen for and reminds him that he might experience some side effects. He then leaves and Abigail walks him out. Collingwood tells her that she might need to take care of him once the side effects kick in. He also commends her because Rick agreed to join the research. She tells him that she's doing it for her son's future. Collingwood has a seminar for the research participants where he explains that the Earth is dying as the population has grown too much and that they are planning to habituate the largest moon of Saturn, Titan. However, instead of terraforming Titan, the research would instead focus on changing humans so they could adjust to life on that moon. One person tries to question the research, saying that the manual they were given before joining the research was filled with health warnings. Rick shuts him down and tells him that he's offering nothing helpful while Collingwood is trying to save humanity with the research. He then tells the professor to continue on with his speech. Rick and the others are given shots to prepare their bodies for training. Their training would apparently consist of preparing their bodies to use more nitrogen instead of oxygen, as Titan has more nitrogen than oxygen. Abigail and Lucas are slowly adjusting to their life at the base as they do their groceries, and Lucas goes to school with the other children, all while supporting Rick as he is given more substances. The Jansons then have a barbecue party in their house. Abigail drinks too much with one of Rick's companions, Tally. Rick talks about the research project with the other participants. One of them says that he knows that they're going to be sent out to Titan for good. Rick reminds him that they were told that they'll only be away for 2 years. They then ask the person who objected to the research earlier as to why he even joined in the first place. He reasoned that he would feel guilty if he hadn't. Rick then sees Abigail dancing and hands over the grill to one of his companions before he goes and dances with his wife. That night, Abigail drunkenly tries to go up the stairs. Rick sees him and helps her up. He suddenly coughs violently once they reach the top, and Abigail notices that he has a fever. She guides him to bed and gives him some medicine before they go to sleep. In the lab, Collingwood looks at a microscope sample and is impressed with what he sees. He then goes to the pool with Freya where Rick and Tally are holding their breath. Tally eventually resurfaces while Rick casually leans back. He then starts to flail around and remove the tech strapped to him before he swims around the pool with superhuman speed before resurfacing. That night, he shows off his new ability to his family. He later on tucks Lucas to bed while reading him an astronomy book. He sees Abigail still swimming in the pool and jumps back in to join her. They start to make out until Abigail notices that the veins on his back started to become black. She tells him to stop before checking it again, but it's gone. They then continue to make out. Abigail gets to talk with Ryan, who's the wife of another participant. Ryan asks her if she gets scared with the entire project and if Rick knows. Abigail says that she does sometimes get scared and that her husband knows. Ryan feels envious as even though she's afraid of the entire thing, she couldn't tell his husband for fear of his anger. Abigail reassures her that what their husbands are doing is important and that their role is to support them. Later on, Abigail wakes up in the middle of the night and finds Rick in the kitchen, holding an ice pack to his neck. He says that he feels hot and didn't want to bother her. She then brings out a bowl of ice and starts to place a towel on him. He tells her to put her hands in the bowl with him. Abigail eventually pulls her hands out and says that it's too cold. Rick then tells her that he doesn't feel the cold at all. The next morning, Abigail and Rick go out for a jog. They climb up a hill overlooking a beautiful view. Rick then says that it's a shame that they couldn't save it and have to move to a different planet. The trainings for the experiment continues and becomes more rigorous. While in the locker room, Rick notices that his hair is falling out and asks if anyone else had experienced that. Tally says that she has and checks out the back of his head, pulling out another clump of hair. Suddenly, another participant starts to have a seizure and begins bleeding. She eventually grows still as she dies while the others stare in horror. That night, the other participants have another dinner at Rick and Abigail's house. They grow scared and doubtful of the experiment. Ryan's husband goes outside and sits down with her while Rick watches them. Tally's husband and Abigail get to talk. She learns that he wanted a family, but Tally enters the room and says that it's not possible now because of her being in the research. Abigail notices her veins growing dark before Tally tells her that she wouldn't have reached that far in the research if it weren't for Rick. Abigail goes to the table to bring out the food and starts to notice that the other participants also have dark veins. Rick looks at her and asks if she's okay. She tells him that she's fine before Ryan's husband starts to have a breakdown and lashes out at Ryan. The next morning, Freya drops by their house to give Rick more substances. Abigail asks about the substances and realizes that they're giving them in inhumane dosages and methods. She demands to talk to Collingwood, but Freya tells her that he's not around and continues the procedure. Rick throws up blood that night. As he gets out, Abigail cleans their bathroom and takes a swab of his blood for later. She then goes to the living room to close a door and notices that there are 2 cameras installed there. She goes for a smoke while Rick sits down at the bottom of their pool, where large portions of his skin start to shed. Abigail sees this, as well as his falling hair, later as she goes to bed with him. The next day, she checks Rick's blood sample under the microscope and sees some irregularities. Meanwhile, Rick has eye surgery that makes him be able to see more in the dark like a feline. His eyes are later on bandaged and he had to ask for help from Lucas in making a sandwich. That night, he starts to experience pain in his eyes and is rushed to a hospital. Abigail sees Collingwood and demands some answers from him. She tells her that he didn't tell them everything and that there were cameras inside the house. He answers that the cameras weren't his idea. She finally tells her about what she found with the blood sample that she got, and Collingwood tells her to go home while he tends to Rick. She does go home and starts to hear a commotion. She sees the military crowding outside Ryan's house, so she immediately runs outside just in time to see Ryan being thrown out the window. She lands on a wall and breaks her neck, resulting in her death. A couple of people from NASA confront Collingwood and calls his research unethical. They want him to stop, but Collingwood insists on continuing and reminds them that they have no jurisdiction over him. Meanwhile, Abigail uses Rick's keycard to sneak into Collingwood's office. She finds several files in there of the actual nature of the research, which is to change the participants to a new breed of humans called Homo titanians. Collingwood returns to his office and Freya starts to question his methods. Collingwood assures her that the research will be successful and tells her to leave once she asks him about the possibility of all the participants dying. Collingwood goes to Rick and Abigail's house the next morning. He tells Rick that they would need to perform surgery on him and the other participants to adjust their brains to their new senses. Abigail then confronts Collingwood about what they were actually researching about. She tells him about what she saw in his office. Collingwood admits that he was altering their DNA by using animal DNA. He also admits that at this point of the research, he has no idea of what they were becoming. Collingwood then tells her that they would need to perform surgery on Rick so that he could keep his sanity, otherwise he would die in a few days. She walks out and Rick tells Collingwood that he told them that the tests were successful. Collingwood then tells him that he told them what they needed to hear then. Rick later on removes the bandage around his eyes and shaves off all of his hair. He takes another swim that night and eventually finds out that he has clear vision even though he's in the dark. The surgery proceeds and most of the participants die. Abigail and Lucas go to the facility to visit Rick. They then see that only Rick and Tally survived and that they have changed so much now. Their skin is now purely white and they communicate through touch and low-frequency sounds, which human ears can't detect. Abigail looks horrified and Collingwood assures her that it's still Rick before giving her his wedding ring. They go home that night and Rick struggles to put on his old clothes. Abigail tells him that it might be too tight for him now and tries to help him, but he accidentally hits her. She sits down on the ground and cries, not able to look at him anymore. Rick goes for a swim and Abigail tucks their son into bed. She then watches him from inside the house and notices that Tally has arrived. She approaches Rick as her hands are bloody. Soldiers arrive at her home and find her husband dead. Abigail watches them before the soldiers arrive at their house. She then runs towards Lucas and they both hide in a room. Meanwhile, the soldiers start to fire tranquilizing darts at Tally and she eventually falls to the ground. As a soldier approaches to catch her, Tally wakes up and kills the soldier but is then shot dead by another one. Rick starts to fight with the remaining soldiers and ends up killing all of them. Abigail, who is holding Lucas, walks out and finds him along with the dead soldiers. Rick panics and runs away. The soldiers start to look for him. Collingwood tells him that they shouldn't kill Rick as they have spent so much on him during their research. The colonel ignores him and joins the hunt for Rick. The military vehicles pass by Freya's house as she goes out and watches them. Abigail goes to a spot they usually go to whenever they jog. She calls for Rick and he appears. She stretches her hand out towards him and he reaches back. The two of them start to kiss before a helicopter finds them. Abigail wakes up in a medical facility and Collingwood tells her that they need to get Rick to Titan so that he can survive. They go to a different base where Rick is enclosed in a cage. Collingwood then tells Abigail that she would have to give him a chemical that erases his memories. Abigail manages to do it and she leaves with Freya. One of the soldiers enters Rick's cage and Collingwood notices that one of the saline solutions is missing. Rick wakes up and kills the soldier before he escapes. Freya and Abigail find Lucas and soon reunite with Rick, who grows weaker. The soldiers and Collingwood soon find them and they are surrounded. Collingwood tells Abigail to leave with Lucas but she refuses. He then tells the soldiers to shoot. The colonel doesn't want to shoot unarmed civilians and the soldiers then aim toward Collingwood. They ride in a plane where Rick is sealed in a capsule. Abigail is told that Rick's survival gives humanity hope for the future. Later on, Abigail becomes a researcher for the Titan program. The movie ends as she goes outside and looks at the sky while Rick is shown to be exploring Titan. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.